So tell me about this conference that you were at. Was it last week? Week before?
Well, unfortunately, I didn't attend because of, I had the flu, and
Oh, okay.
I actually just sent like a little 5-minute introduction. I'm on a board there, the Spring Gardens. It's actually part of the Indian Center in Las Vegas.
Okay. Now I have a
So yeah,
question about, you said Indian. Is Indian like an inappropriate? I mean, you're using the word. Is it an
you know
inappropriate
what?
word?
I'm not caught into that.
Yeah.
A lot of the government buildings still carry the Indian health clinic, Indian this, Indian that.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, that's all political BS in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's just like with when I teach indigenous farming practices and spirituality. I don't claim natives and brown people of color are the only indigenous people. To me,
Right.
indigenousness is that we all had a nature-based connection.
Exactly.
And so that's how I bring together all the cultures. I take away the religious, the political, the culture, all that,
Yeah.
and integrate us as one part of the whole matrix of life.
Well, that's it. We all have those roots. Every culture has those roots. Some
Right,
just
right.
farther back than others. So,
Exactly. And interestingly enough, I've had the privilege of, coming back to life and being able to witness prophetic, teachings from way back where I've now been meeting children, adults from all over the world who totally accept and understand this nature-based connection, and it's being regenerated. And so I have the privilege to share and teach and hold space for, those who are seeking to unify humanity to the most highest level, from the heart level of carrying on the understanding and the healing of Mother Earth.
yeah.
And ourselves, by the way, ourselves first. And then, of course, the mother is always going to take care of herself.
Yeah.
But when we can understand who we are and how we're integrated into that matrix, then we can have a more deeper, intimate relationship with that evolution.
This thing came to me, I don't know, many, many years ago. Basically, we are nature. It's not nature and us.
Exactly.
We are nature.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So that's what I appreciate about this time in the evolution of, the earth, especially because it's prophetic. And I never thought I'd live to see the day. Of course, I died before, and here I am.
yeah.
And, yeah.
So tell me more of what the prophecy is exactly.
Well, there's this prophecy of what the Hopis and some other cultures globally called a purification. And that is might sound a little bit weird, but it's also prophetic in that we're going to be uh, saved or helped by our alien relatives.
Hmm.
And originally, when I heard it, there's going to come back, nature's going to get back in balance, and it was a very threatening and warring type of prophecy, real grim. I heard that as a young boy, but I also heard from my grandmother the female version. It's more loving, it's more regenerative, it's more inviting. There's a future to it. There's a rebalance within our soul nature or our heart nature, getting back integrated with the nature of mother, and getting into the rhythm of that cycle. And then when we get that generated, then it goes up to our relatives, and they bring back, in my case, what I a number of years ago I started acknowledging and recognizing blue star children, or what they call star seeds. And they're the ones who are going to bring on the compassion, the love, the understanding of the feminine side of our human experience, the divine nature in general, just the reawakening of and stimulating our heart.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, so.
What about
So
the plant wisdom and the permaculture? your background there?
As a matter of fact, I'm going to be doing a really simple raised bed class, and that's when I'm going to be getting into the practices that my father and my uncle Albert Yeva taught me. It's kind of interesting because my dad was a gardener, and he grew a lot of flowers and stuff, and that was his private time. And the only time I got to hear about the spiritual aspects of planting and the connection that we have with our seeds and our plants was when he and my uncle Albert were drinking. And they would just spill the beans. And I was fortunate enough to be around them. And I'm sure my mother and my aunties were thinking, they're just out there just getting drunk and blah, blah, blah. Well, I was a little boy, and a lot of times I was driving them around. But this is what they were talking about, and the old way, and singing songs. And so our connection with plant life is through singing. And I didn't know at the time, but it was connecting through the frequency and vibration of the certain chords and rhythms that we were singing. So when I got into starting to teach the practices that they taught me, the songs were too long, too complicated. So I teach people to hum the songs or the rhythm of a song. I introduce the basic rhythm that I was taught through these songs. And the thing about those, there's a certain rhythm, but each one of those songs is a personal request or singing to, the sun, the seed, and the earth. So once they get a basic rhythm, then I ask them to make their own.
Yeah,
sound.
that's where I was going to go with that, because I think like if you really connect, and you have that intention, then you can find the sounds.
Yes. So basically, I take away the excuses of I can't do this or what am I doing wrong. And of course, in nature, there is no right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to make it as simple as I can for them. And the most important part is that we certainly have a huge, not only a genetic, but a vibrational and a frequency input in the development of the seed and how that the fruit of that seed is going to nourish us from, the energy that we put in through singing or humming. And the interesting thing about that is that even in substandard soil, I'll just use squash, for example. Some of the minerals that we might need that aren't in the soil magically appear from the fruit of the squash that comes out. There is a scientific study about it, but yeah. So whatever the intentions, the love we put into what we're doing, it comes back and feeds us with, if you had, if you were lacking magnesium, iron, or whatever, magically it comes through that fruit.
It has
Yeah.
it. And even if it's not in the soil.
Exactly.
Right.
And of course, now we're understanding that it's coming through the air. Because the air is like a electromagnetic, you might even say fertilizer. And so I've been doing some studying lately, and because of that matrix that we're under in electromagnetic way, I'm believing that's where it's coming.
It just reminds me of Masaru Emoto's work, the Japanese fellow that would paint characters of love or something on water jug.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's the same sort of idea, right? It's our intention, it's the vibration, and then it's like realigning the structural nature of the water.
Yeah. And the interesting thing about the electromagnetic umbrella wonder, it's all stuck in these little tiny droplets of water that are coming back to us as well.
That reminds me of something you told me once, that it still comes to me, because sometimes we can't, if we don't have access to say the grass-fed beef and the most beautiful organic vegetables and all
Yes,
these things, we don't have that, then you told me, and I always remember this, just bless it.
exactly.
Bless what you're, bless it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we never lack.
Mm-hmm.
And I was on I got gifted with a year or so ago, an 8-day Grand Canyon river rafting trip. And I was asked, if you had one big thing in life that you wanted to give back, what would it be? And I said that we could understand that we're all divine beings encased in matter. And the gentleman who asked me, he goes, well, that came out quick. And I believe that's where we're transitioning now, those who are like-hearted, that we can understand that we are these conduits that can transform whatever we choose to transform. I've grown beans and corn that are supposed to be grown above a 7-foot elevation here in Yuma. I've grown them on Martha's Vineyard. I've grown them in Hawaii. Because I have this expectation, and this is also what I teach in Indigenous farming, is that I have an expectation of the seed, and that expectation is that it's going to produce, but the other is abundantly. So there is no lack.
And what about the conditions like water and whatnot? Do you
Well,
that factor or?
Well, actually, I like to when I water, I actually like to have my finger on the hose, so that water is going over my fingers, right? When I flood irrigate, I put my hands in that water, and I'm only using tap water. Now, there are times when I feel like I'm growing something that needs to be used in a ceremonial way. Then there's a spring in Oak Creek Canyon, up around where Sedona's at, which I've been getting water there since I was a little boy, and so I get gallons of that water and bring it back here to Yuma and mix it in a bucket with regular tap water. And of course, stirring it with my hand and energetically changing the tap water with the pure water from Oak Creek Canyon.
Right.
I also do that when I'm doing my pottery. I've actually been in competitions where somebody makes a salad and we all use the same ingredients and yours is different. And I believe it's because of the water. I believe because it's been blessed. And I also believe it's really a part of me. I think that's what energetically lifts up the quality of what we're consuming.
I agree.
And so I can even take, a store-bought apple or orange, hold it in my hand, and I even visualize actually a blue light, right? And know that I've had to prove this with you. You get sour, oranges and stuff, and we start eating them, and I'll hold it and blue light it, and then they'll taste it. And out of the same batch, why is yours sweeter? Because, by the way, because I've been practicing this divine nature, which in the coming year I'm going to be teaching a little bit more about that. And it was my grandmother years ago who taught me all those things. And of course, I walked away from it, and eventually, especially after I died and came back, then.
Your grandmother was the potter?
Yes, Grace Chapella.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't lately, but prior to COVID, I was doing a lot of traveling to different wildcrafting, ancient skills gatherings, teaching pottery. since COVID, I've had a couple of minor strokes. My hands aren't as good as they used to be. So that's kind of on the back burner until I regenerate my body to come in line with what's coming up in the next 5 to 10 years.
Right.
And that's walking and riding, or however I have to do it, from the border here from San Luis, Mexico, all the way up to Moab, Utah, along the Colorado River, talking about the intimate connection that we have with water. I wasn't satisfied with water is life. That's redundant. It's like saying an army of one. No such thing. Because we all, depending on your value of life, it's almost meaningless. Like Clinton said way back in the day when he was asked a question, and his response was, it depends on the definition of is. What is your definition of is? took away the it just took away anything concrete. It disconnected us. And so I believe, in a sense, that's where the English language has gone to. So what I'm going to do is integrate this back into the matrix of how we're connected through the animals and trees, and just like I've been studying now about the electromagnetic ocean that is above us. And I sit in this little space here, and sometimes this information just downloads. I might have a thought, and all of a sudden, a friend send me information. Yeah. And so it might be complex, and I just kind of decipher in the most simplest way so that I could, give it to somebody else. And if they want a more complex definition, well, here, you go look at this site. And they come back, oh yeah, that's what they was talking about. Yeah. And I think that I'm going to go back to that blessing and stuff. That's where it really comes back to our understanding our divine nature. There is no lacking in that. We just need to be open to receive it.
I have to ask you about climate change, because it's February here and we had a freezing rainstorm again. We've had hardly any snow, a lot of really warm days, and it's clear that the climate is changing. What do you feel about that?
Well, I think my scientific friends who study oceanography, depths, have indicated to me that this occurs. Whether it's the swaying of this dance that we play with gravity, or the magma that is the life source underneath Earth is moving, that these events occur. Now it gets more complex for us because of this huge impact that we have had with since the Industrial Revolution. But if we can go back in the 70s when, California was one of the most polluted states, right? I mean, I remember I left there, I think it was like a 3-stage smog alert. I could barely breathe. And then yet 5 years later, nature corrected us. So we just had to do some things, change what we were putting into our gas, blah, 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 blah. And Earth kind of like rebalanced herself. Earth always wins, by the way.
So you're hopeful then? Because a lot of people call it the climate crisis now.
Right. And that's to keep that fear shit going. And the powers that be, I believe, they want to impose that need, that they are the ones who have to help us. They have the answer. And they dictate it to you by scientific quote unquote fear.
Okay.
Right. So how do I deal with that? Well, I just changed the definition of fear. So what I did was I went and looked up. Well, actually, I had a brother-in-law who passed away from COVID, but he was a Sanskrit scholar, and I looked at all the Western dictionaries for a definition of fear, and of course, they're what you and I are, knowing what fear is. So I asked him, what is the root word, Sanskrit root word of fear? And so, a couple of days later, he comes back with this big old smile on his face. You're going to love this, brother. He goes, you're going to love this. He goes, the root word definition of fear is reverence of life. And he says, now what are you afraid of? So this is when I teach and share. I don't bring all the other stuff in, but I certainly tell them about, if you want to learn something from me, you're going to have to understand one thing. You have to change your definition of fear. It's the root word. And by the way, the root word implies that it still has the frequency and vibration to produce change or life. And that's based on how we perceive ourselves as a divine being. So I don't get caught up, just like this whole UFO stuff. That's all.
Oh yeah,
that's all being
right.
manipulated. Yeah. Yeah.
It's control.
You look at the people. Oh yeah, you look at the people in power. They're still planning 50, 100 years from now the future. But yet they're keeping us back here.
Mm.
So because they understand that it's an evolutionary process, and we go through these. And I'm blessed in my case because I really don't have that. I went through college and I've done a lot of my just personal studies, but through my travels and associations, I've met philosophers, intellectuals, scientists where I can glean from their gardens.
Right.
Or if someone wants a more complex answer or things that I can't answer, then I refer them to my friends.
There's one thing that you said. You said you had a brother-in-law that passed away from COVID, right? Because
Yes.
COVID was another thing used
Yes.
for control manipulation. So did your brother-in-law pass away from COVID, or was it a complication?
That's the thing.
Right.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Because when people were dying, they were just putting it under one category.
Right.
So that's the way he got sick. And of course now the interesting thing is some of the teachers and stuff that we have in our life, even though he brought me that definition of fear, maybe he totally didn't understand how it applied to him.
Mm.
And so it could be that because of his divine nature, when he bowed to, what we were told about COVID, it energized it in his own life. And of course, manifested itself. And that's the one thing about divine nature, which I talk to those that I mentor about be careful about what you think, how you act, all these things. And if you're going to, I don't know, I no longer use like minds and like hearts, but I do say like hearts. So where is your heart's status when it comes to any thing that's happening in your life, gardening, romance, whatever, professional, jobs and stuff like that? Where is your heart in it? And I think when your heart's in it, then all that divine energy that we carry becomes more alive and real.
What happens if you don't feel your heart in it? What is that, a sign, or what does that mean?
Well, I can definitely say that when your heart isn't anything, you're on the road to, as Gary Larson once illustrated a cartoon of these a church full of Dalmatians, and there's the head Dalmatian at the pulpit saying, "Bad dogs, bad dogs." It all depends on how we, you might say, and it's another thing, how we judge ourselves, and if we're not open to that deeper, more intimate connection. And by the way, it's because we're taught really not to accept ourselves at a real good, loving place. We have sin, we have these, we have that, we have all these things that keep us from tapping into our divine source.
Yeah, and I know that your death experience really opened you up to being able to love and embrace yourself fully. But can people get there without having to go to that point?
Well, in a sense, they have to, like, yes, die to their own ego. And I'm not necessarily talking about, the ego that we were taught to believe, but I'm also talking about our divine essence. And it's hard for people to accept because of what we're taught through religion, culture, and society, that we have a pure nature being. And it can become very, very, very intimate to where, especially for a man, to become more expressive, to be more in touch with his senses. Everything gets more heightened when you're in connected to your heart. You hear better, you taste better, you smell clearer. The energy that's passed between the hands is more alive. So it's dying to what we presume is our nature. And that's with the that ego I was talking about is connected with the cultural, the religious, all those. And by the way, that causes some separation, not only from other individuals, but it decompartmentalizes ourselves. And so basically what I've learned is that there's a mind ego and a heart ego. I choose to listen to my heart ego. And that causes you to rise, or what my Tibetan nuns would say, to float, to rise up to a higher, I'll just use the word standard. I'll just use it, rise up to your rightful status in life. And we're not all divine healers. We're not all this, but we all have a certain place or important part. We're all an important part of the puzzle.
What are there any sort of like simple practices to get you, I guess, in that mode?
Well, I teach a practice meditation that's called being present in the day, because we're all taught about this eternal life that we have, and through the death experience, I realized that our eternity is one day. This day. That's our eternity. Certainly had a past. Presumably, hopefully, we're going to have a future. But our eternity is this day. And so how do we live to the highest good, which in my interpretation of love is to will the highest good toward one. And of course, that begins with me. So through the teachings of my grandmother about being able to rise each day with prayer, I did some study on different indigenous practices. And then about 6 years ago, I developed this meditation. And so it's the raising of the hands like this. You have what I call a sun window, right? And that's acknowledging that I'm present to this day. I'm honoring the sun, right? And then I push my hands to the side, and that means I'm creating my personal place or space in this practice of the day. I'm claiming it. And by the way, this personal space is my, you might say, wall. You know, it keeps me from getting into other people's personal space and them coming into mine. And also verbally, if they're saying something, I just gonna walk away. I don't even have to receive it. So that's claiming my personal space. I'm here, present now. And then I push my hands down to the side. And that is like I'm pushing the chakras deep, deep, deep into earth, right? And creating a root base system. And I'm connecting now the sun to mother, right? So what I do is I breathe in and I push any type of emotional type of feeling I might have deep into that earth, ground it. And then what I do is I lift up my hands and put them on my hips and say, I'm like a superhero. I am present now, right? You know, like being present. And then I bring my hands back up like this and I put them above my head. And that reminds me that I still have this umbilical cord, or what I was taught was this cotton string to our relatives in the cosmos, right? That I'm connected.
Mm.
And then I bring it down here so that my intellectual mind will come into accord, and I bring my hands down to my heart. And then I
Clap.
so yes, wake up, get into the day. And so that's how I make sure that I'm connected every day with being present so that I could live it to that highest standard. And some of the people I mentor, I do that for them as well. But I don't talk about or bring about their personal needs. All I talk about is a path, you know. Thank you that the path I walked yesterday brought me to this present day, and I hold that this present day will lead me to my path tomorrow.
There's peace
That's
there.
what I do.
The peace.
Yeah, yeah. And at each one of those processes too, there's this breathing that I ask them to do. Yeah. And it all started out with my grandmother teaching them about the sun window. Yeah.
The sun window?
Yeah, that's just the first one. You know, she told me that all farmers need to have a relationship with the sun. We're dependent on the sun, our life source. And she was talking in terms of seeds and stuff, but now I'm the seed, you see. You know what I'm saying? I need the energy of the sun to grow. And the sun, there's no judgment in the sun, shines on the good and bad. See? And I'm blessed in that I understand the divine feminine, and most of my students here that I mentor are women that are grown, and which in nature, they're the life force. So I feel really honored that I get to share with them. And I mentioned earlier this group of Hispanic women we call the tribe. We're ready to receive it.
How did you meet them?
There was this, I got invited to this cacao ceremony that there was this Jose think his last name was Mendez. He's from the lineage of the Mayan calendar. And he happened to be in Yuma. And a friend of mine invited me. And as soon as we saw each other, telepathically, man, we started talking really quick. And so the next day he was going to be doing a water blessing ceremony. And he asked if I would help him. So sure. And so at the ceremony, there was some other individuals at the water blessing ceremony that weren't at the cacao ceremony. And so after we do this water blessing along the Colorado River, as I'm walking out, I felt this pull, literally a pull to the side. And I looked, and there was this group of Hispanic ladies sitting there. And there was this one gal. We just locked eyes. And after the evening was over, the friend of mine took me. I said, "Wait, I want to go meet that lady over there." I said, "There's somebody I'm supposed to meet over there." So I went over there and introduced myself, and I said, I just have to say that when I walked by, I really felt like there's. Do I know you? No, she didn't. So we decided, well, let's meet tomorrow. And so she came the next day and didn't even look like the same lady that I met the night before. That's the way it works. And it turned out to be Yolanda. And she introduced me to her shaman down in San Luis, Mexico, who was much younger than I. His name was Silver Fox. And I never put two and two together, but 10 years ago, they used to call me the Silver Fox in a medicine way. And so here I am, 10 years later, meeting her shaman, who is Silver Fox, a young man, probably 32, something like that. But he was holding space for about 15 ladies, along with his now wife. So they just took me in as an elder. And it's been over a year now that I've been heartfully received in their community. And they hold me as, the old man, the teacher. They keep reminding me I'm old. I want to do something. Oh, you're too old. They keep me real. But that's how I met him. That's how I got into that group, through Yolanda. Yeah. And taught her, to all of them, to a greater degree, to believe in themselves and who they are and stuff like that. And
How do you teach somebody to do that?
by story. That's because that's the way I was taught, to tell them a story. And if they're asking too many questions, I stop. That's not how you listen to a story. And in the storytelling, I let them create their own ideas and belief systems, because I don't want to create another me. I want to build up their divine character and nature. And so later, if they want to come back and ask me questions about their interpretation of that story, that's what I do. But I teach by story. And I'm also learning this past 3 months, because I'm going to be talking more about this water walk, which I and a scientific friend of mine, a scientist here in Yuma, we're calling it a walk on water. and the subtitle is "Water, Our Precious Source." So that's how I integrate the intimate connection or the matrix that we play with water. So when I have people listening, of course, I thank them for sharing that time, having the open ear. And if you need any more help, then I'm willing to help you. And you go out and find out and what you need to know and come back to me, and we'll see how it works.
I feel like asking you if you would share a story now.
Oh. I really can't think of a story right now, interestingly enough, because it's usually based on a question. Yeah. And I might use a bird story. I might use a water story. I might use,
How about a story about grief? How about healing grief?
Well, grief is an interesting thing because it depends on how we were taught in our culture, a religion, or the society that we're brought up in. In our way, in the Puebloan way, is that the transition, of course, is there is never a loss because there is a reincarnate experience. Just like in my case, when I was born, my auntie said that I was a man with many wives, right? That I had many lives and many wives when I was born into this. And later, when I met Tibetan, the Rinpoche family, and some of their nuns, Yonggi told me that I have had at least 1,000 lives, which almost sounds like 1,000 wives, right? But anyway, so there is this transition. There is not quote unquote death that we think that we're led to believe. I mean, immediately after I died, I realized that, hey, we judge ourselves. And I knew there was another life going to happen. So going back to the Pueblo way, there's a certain amount of days for grief, right? And it varies from clan to clan or tribe to tribe within that cultural, the Pueblo culture. And so we allow ourselves, because by the way, the ones who have transitioned, they're evolving into another space, another state. So we have to get in contact with ourselves to where we can allow them to move freely, because we're taught to believe that our grief can hold them from transition. So this is why there's a certain amount of days. And then if it goes beyond, if we carry that grief beyond, then it causes suffering in their lives. And then that suffering, because we're not allowing them to transition, comes into our lives. And it becomes stagnant. And so grief to me is once we go these certain amount of days, becomes a celebration. A celebration for them, a celebration for us. And in that celebration, there are two dinners. The first dinner is like after the funeral, you have a big dinner. And then after a certain amount of days, you have another dinner. The dinner that's held right after the funeral is for, the body that's gathered there. After this certain amount of days, I'll just say 7 days, because it's a secret. But anyway, after there's this 7 days, then we have another dinner. And that dinner is for our relatives and them who are transitioning, so that we provide a beautiful banquet table that our relatives or those who that person that transition can present to the host of wherever they're growing.
Right.
Because we might not all come back as native.
Yeah.
So they bring a treasure or a table of food, make a presentation.
Yeah, it's something when you talked about the suffering, it just occurred to me that it's because we want to keep them how they were to us, how we identified with them in our relationship in the context of our lives with them. And yes. Because I remember that, you told me after that my dog passed away in July at almost 15 years old, right? That there was a certain period of transition, right? But that I could have this relationship, I could be talking to him every day. Now, in talking to him every day, he wouldn't be the same being that I identified with in dog body in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had an interesting thing in 2 years, I've had 3 feral cats that have magically, as tiny kittens, appeared in my backyard. There's like almost a 9-foot adobe brick wall. Somehow, magically, they appeared in my backyard. And being that they're feral, I knew that, they weren't probably going to make good, they don't come into my daughter's house. Where I'm at right now, but that they weren't going to be, homebody cats. And certainly the first 2 weren't. And one still roams around the neighborhood, comes back once a week, let me know he's still alive, and I appreciate him. Well, you're still kicking around, huh? And he splits again. And then I had another one, Blue, that kept wanting to go out the back gate. I said, hey, man, it's a tough world out there. You better watch out, man. You got everything you hear in the backyard. There's no reason for you to go running around. So, of course, one day he gets run over. And luckily, my daughter was on to work, and she saw him. And when I got to him, he was still warm. And obviously got run over by the head. So it was an instant death. And the first thing I did was take him to Bissett, the last cat. And I said, hey, look, I've been warning what happened to Blue, and this is what happens. And up until that point, Bissett never wanted to be around me, right? Very independent little kid. Wouldn't only time I could get to touch him was when he was eating. And the morning I bury his brother Blue, Bissett changes. Wants to be my best buddy. Sleeps on my bed every night with me. Is right there with me. So in a sense, it was like what I wanted from Cosmos, I wasn't getting, and what my expectations of Blue, I wasn't getting. Now Bissett is giving me what I was lacking from the first 2. So they're not missing, even though Cosmos is still alive, running around, and Blue is into, the catnip garden somewhere in space. I still have one more cat left that's giving me the things that these other 2 cats weren't giving. So there's never, it's almost like those 2 cats knew that there was something I needed, but they couldn't give it to me. So they kind of had to step out of the way so that
somebody else, could.
Yes. And this has caused me to have a more deeper appreciation for Bissett, which is the Egyptian name for,
Right.
that feline. Yeah.
Yes, right, right, right.
Yeah. So there's never a loss in death. It
Mm,
just reincarnates.
mm,
And when I think we receive that, these are, and by the way, these are ways to get in contact with that heart nature as well. See, look into the deeper meaning of life. Just like if the heart is taken out right away, it could go into, you can put it in anybody's body, just give it an electric jolt. It has no judgment in it, and all that other kind of stuff. And unfortunately, uh, a lot of the things that we experience emotionally uh, in life darkens our heart. Let's see, because we're quote unquote taught to believe that's where love and all that purity is in there, which any heart surgeon would tell you, man, you need to know what's that heart is really doing, taking all that funky old blood, you know, doing all that stuff, and then putting it back into your body. Just like a heart surgeon friend of mine, Pearl, he told me one time, don't ever say you love people from the bottom of my heart, because that's the dumping grounds of the heart.
hmm.
So yeah, when we start living and experiencing our existence from our heart, then we're willing to receive whatever quote unquote negative interpretations, impressions we might have in life or even on ourselves. When we understand that there's no judgment in the heart, then it causes us to understand that the only reason why I'm having experiences is because I am judging my own life. And you might say, I don't even have the right to do that, because there is no judgment in life, just the experience. And as I teach, the abundance. That's just what I believe. And it works. Um, Presently, I've been going through some issues with my body, and instead of being, like, can't do the pottery, all these other things, instead of being bitter and angry about it, I just thinking about, well, what is left that I could still have some type of art form, an expressive way. And as it's turning out lately, it's been getting back into, the metaphysical experience and the indigenous spirituality that I practice. Uh, and yeah, I don't get bitter about it. I just try to keep living the life in the fullest nature, abundance that I can. And even though some people might say it's limited, to me, it's still full. And by the way, that fullness also gives me the ability to expand my nature. So in a sense, I might say, this is where I want to go, and I'm locked in what I want to do and go. And then when I perceive that thing wants to try to own me, then I open it up so that I don't say, let's just say, so for example, I've been holding this truth for so many years, right? And when I'm introduced to another truth, uh, do I call myself a fool for believing in this truth I held for so many years? No. I say, or I teach, is that I held that truth in my heart and to the highest ability that I could, which is love. I practiced it. I've practiced it. So when I'm ready to receive another truth, what I do is I take the truth that I've held and put it back into this stream of consciousness where it came from originally, right? So I say that the truth that I lived, when I put it back into that flow of consciousness, then it becomes somebody else's truth, but now more richer because I have practiced it in my own life. So there is no loss in that giving away of that truth that I held so dearly to me. It just becomes more energized when it goes back into the flow of consciousness.
To serve someone else.
Yes. And there's no like, you mean I wasted 10 years on that? No. So it keeps me from judging myself and keeps me from judging that truth. I just put it back into the flow, more empowered. Like I tell my people, 110 times more powerful. You could be 100%, but I like to hold them up a little higher, so I say 110%.
You said something about power. How has your point of view of what power is evolved over the course of your life?
You know what power is? Power is surrender. That's what power is.
Yeah.
That's what power is. And this is why I can step into every new day an empty vessel. As like, my Buddhist friends would say, which I heard a long time ago, was that if we all understood life was suffering, then there would be no suffering.
So it's our resistance to the suffering that makes us suffer.
Yeah. And by suffering and letting and understanding, going back to power, it comes not to a certain doctrine or anything like that, but it just becomes more different level of vibration and frequency. Which comes from here. And how do we get in contact with that? Through our life breath, which, by the way, goes through the good and bad, no judgment. And earlier, when I showed you that little meditation of being present in the day, that comes in with whatever that day brings, and that's that life breath that carries us through that daily experience. Because we don't know if it's going to be, somebody's going to come and try to mess up our day or whatever. But it's that life breath that keeps us, at least in my mind, and in my mind and my heart, at least it keeps me centered on holding into that sacred space that I did earlier.
When somebody tries to mess with your day, is doing their level best to kind of take you outside of yourself, what practice?
I'm sorry?
When somebody is trying to, say, bait you or bring you into some sort of negative headspace or, pull you into something, what is your practice?
Either say, you know what, man, that doesn't go with me. You need to stop. If not, then later. Or if they come here and they kept trying to do I say, you know what, man, you came here. Now I want you to leave. That easy, that simple. And you know what? They always come back. So by asking them to leave and claiming my space, I'm keeping myself from making a judgment on them, because if they do, then I won't be able to give them the full information because I've created this judgment in my mind about them. That's why I tell them, you need to stop, you need to get away, because you're not ready to receive what I have to tell you, but sooner or later, guess what? You're going to come back. I mean, I've had people write letters, who they thought I was, blah, 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 you know, and I've never read them. I just burned them. And you know what? And when they've come, when they've come back, they get upset that I didn't read it. Because if they did, well, they'll be catching my Hal and Dalmatians, you know,
right.
pulpit talk. So, you know, that's how I avoid that. And I'm really practicing on them the grace that I've practiced on me. Yeah, that's what I do.
Look at the light around you right now.
Oh yeah, where did
Right?
that come from, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sure if I was outside, the hummingbirds would be flying all around me, or butterflies. That's they're little reminders of you know, butterflies, and they were the ones who brought me back from my death
I
experience.
remember that. Yeah.
And of course, my grandmother's symbology of dragonflies and butterflies. So when they fly around, that they always remind me that I'm speaking the truth, because some things I really don't want to tell people, you know. But when I see them flying around, and I have to just take that life breath and tell them. Yeah. So, and then again, a lot of that is just based on, you know, indigenous spirituality that I've taken from all cultures: Polynesian, African, Asian.
And what is that indigenous spirituality? What does that mean to you?
Nature-based.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just paying attention to what's around
Right.
you.
Yeah, in my personal space, in the home, in the community, in the state, in the country, in the world, and in the cosmos. That's the nature-based experience.
Mm-hmm. It includes everybody and everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There's not an us and them. It's all everybody.
Exactly. You know, all connected in the matrix of life. And the one big element that we share is, of course, water. Yeah. Well, yeah, nature is such an amazing thing. Yeah.
We are an amazing thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're our own garden and paradise within ourselves. You know, I had that Grand Canyon trip, which the group I was traveling with were very wealthy and whatnot, technocrats, but the universe brought us together, and I was asked, you know, what do I want to teach? And I think I told earlier, we're all, you know, divine beings. But it was those individuals who heard and believed the story, and then empowered me to come out of that experience to share it even more.
Hmm.
Yeah. I tell people that if you just have one person that believes in you, that's enough. I had like 27 people heard those stories, honored them, empowered me. Because in the coming year, I'm going to be making more bold statements. Not a challenge, just a bold statement. Asking all of us to elevate ourselves to this heart consciousness that we actually really want to do.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so it's based on, you know, what are your goals in life? What do you want to do? And let's focus on that. Because all the other stuff are always going to come into play. That's what they call the monkey brain stuff. If we're focused within here, then all that static can occur, and we can just transform that static into energy. So even that static in that monkey brain becomes enriching to us on a vibrational frequency level, just energy. And again, energy has no judgment either, it just wants to be used. So I believe it comes into our core, and then we, like a conduit or transformer, can change it. Even if somebody says something to me and very, really angry, I take, ooh, man, you feel the power of that? See? And I don't hold it against an individual because that person just blessed me whether they know it or not. And Lord, the whole thing is that I give myself every benefit of the doubt. And that's what I just share with other individuals as well. If I'm not going to judge myself, how dare I judge them? There is a practice that I also do, is that when there is that anger expressed, I also give it to the most loving, trusted source that I know, that I go to, that I trust. I give that to that source. And I have to be comfortable whatever the outcome is.
What does that mean? Can you give an example?
That means if, just say, somebody was, hated my guts or something, and or it could be, let's say, really threatening, right? Let's say to the point where even I realize how, because I'm a human being, I realize what that threat is, and I'm thinking, well, I need to keep my radars up, right? Now, I could live in that guarded status, right? First, I acknowledge it, so it goes up. And then the trust steps back into my life. Now, my trust is in my source for protection and everything, guidance and everything. So when I give that anger to that source, I have to know that when it's going to come back to me, it's not going to come to me in any physical threat or anything like that. And there have been cases where sometimes they come and apologize. And there's even been a couple of cases where they got sick and got sick and never really came back. And I have to accept that as well. And I don't go to them and say, well, I'm sorry. No, because I gave it to the most trusted source I know. I'm not, in a sense, no, I am not my brother's keeper. No one has given me that right. We're led to believe we are, but we're not. And
when you surrender something up like that, and let's say, do you ever find your mind circling around to it? And if you do, what then?
I step back into the definition of grace, undeserved merit. See, I still allow them, I give them that higher status as well that I hold myself to. If we're divine beings, and I believe also we're brought together because, we've had some type of experience in regeneration or whatnot in the past. So sometimes the universe brings us back together for the higher good of, the universe. Yeah, undeserved merit. We're all divine beings encased in matter. Merit is grace is you can't earn it, you can't sell it, you can't give it away. It's just been bestowed upon. And so in grace, there is no judgment. There is no, none of those things that we're led to believe can keep us from evolving into a higher form of human being. And as I tell the people coming to my path. You've come to me whole and complete. I'm just here to help wake you up.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because in grace, there is no lacking. There is a root definition for grace too, you know. So just putting that out there. If you're interested, what do these words mean? Go to the root word definition, and you'll understand. Some of them have way different meanings than we're taught to believe. And in a sense, in Christianity, you're under God's grace. In a sense, that's almost a form of, if you want my grace, you have to live a certain type of way. That's the BS to this biggest core, because grace is freely given. And
no strings.
Depends on where, yeah.
Yeah.
Depends on where we want to, you know, I mentioned earlier, where we want to float in life, as the Tibetans would say. And I even had an experience when I was down in the Grand Canyon about, I was elevated, and I wasn't asleep, I wasn't dreaming, but I actually felt my cot come off the ground about 4 feet. And when it rose, you know, I've always had this experience with UFOs and stuff. And I was watching these stars dancing, pinching myself, making sure that I'm awake. I'm not, this isn't a dream. And then I remember I put my hands and my feet, and I was elevated. And so when I got home, what I did was I put my bed up 4 feet off the ground. My sleeping has become better. My dreams have become better. So in a sense, what I was taught to float walking is now I'm floating when I'm asleep. I don't know what that means as far as all I know is when I rose from the riverbed of the Grand Canyon, I saw this magic happen. And I felt there's a reason for me to come to this height, so that's what I came home and I practiced it.